Class, welcome to week 4. During week 4, we will be discussing inventory control models. Here are our learning objectives. In each section, we'll be talking about different aspects of inventory control. As you can well understand, that inventory is a big part of how a business conducts its operation. And it's important to manage inventory. If we look across different venues, we'll see where inventory have to be maintained at an appropriate level across different facets of organizational designs and processes. The major goal is to minimize the cost of maintaining inventories. As stated before, almost all organizations have some type of inventory to control, and therefore has to have a system to manage that inventory. And in the big picture, inventory planning involves demand forecasting, which was our discussion last week. So, what is the big picture? Well, this slide depicts the big picture. You have stuff coming in, and you have to plan for how much and how many of that stuff that you have coming in, and you have to control for it. So therefore you have forecasting and you have control, and then once you understand the forecasting and the control, then you put in, well, am I doing this optimally? Am I doing it right? And therefore you're going to have different measures of feedback to revise and replan for the inventory that you have to hold. Here are 5 uses of the inventory. As you can see, it is a decoupling function. You have to store resources. You got irregularity of supply and demand. And there's also a function in there that includes quantity discounts. And the biggest thing you want to do is to avoid stockouts and shortages. So the first item that we look at is the decoupling of the manufacturing process. Well, what is this thing called decoupling? Well, the thing is that we have to look at what is it that we have to have between different stages of my manufacturing processes. In one stage, you're going to require something, and in another stage, you're going to require something else. Think of the manufacturing of an automobile. In one phase, you're going to require what we're making the car out of, the steel, the support systems. In another section, you're going to require the engine components, and then another section you're going to require the electrical components, and so forth and so on, the drivetrain, the wheels, all that. And in different parts of this process requires different types of inventory. And we have to make sure that we have the right inventory in the right place and the right quantity in order to get our processes done. We talked about storing resources. Again, different seasonality may require us to store different levels. And you think of the snow shovel. When is it that is most important that stores have a quantity of snow shovels on hand? Vice the low demand period, you run around at the end of spring and the beginning of summer, you may not be able to find a snow shovel because there's no demand to it. The other function is to compensate for irregular supply and demand. Again, this may go with seasonal functions and storing function, and that demand may not be constant over time. And having that inventory may be able to buffer that variability. As you may realize that sometimes when we order more, it costs less. Not only it costs less by getting a bulk order, but it may reduce our shipping costs. So the lower the prices that we can, the lower the prices that we can get by ordering bulk quantities may be crucial to our inventory processes. But then you have to remember, on the other hand, if I order in bulk quantities, I have to make sure I have all the proper storage facilities in place in order to manage that. And then the big overall pictures we discussed, we want to avoid stockouts and shortages, because we know that if we don't have a product or we don't have what we need in inventory, that's going to delay our processes. All right, so the big picture is there are two fundamental decisions when controlling inventory. How much do we order and when to order? And we want to minimize the total inventory cost. Not the inventory, we want to minimize the total inventory cost. So what are those costs associated with the inventory? Well, it's the cost of the item, it's the cost of ordering, it's cost of carrying or holding the inventory. And then we also incur a cost when we don't have the inventory at hand. So here are inventory cost factors. We have the ordering cost, how much it costs to order, and then we have the cost to carry in this slide. So we talk about ordering cost, and as I stated before, ordering costs are not necessarily dependent on the quantity that we order, and we have to look at this in each stage. While it's a carrying cost, it might also vary with the amount of the inventory. And the things that we look at include the labor, the space, and other costs, as shown on the previous slide, that it costs to carry an item.